Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to Solutions Watch. I'm your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, coming to you in February 2025 with another edition of, I believe, the only weekly media production in the truly independent media space that focuses not on doomsaying and black pills and fear porn, but on solutions, things that you can actually do to start improving your life today. Hope, not hopium. And in that regard, boy, do I have a solution for you today for a problem that I know is affecting a lot of people where it hurts them the most obviously, which is to say in the pocketbook. What am I talking about? Well, have you gone to the supermarket lately? Have you bought any eggs lately? Then you know what I'm talking about. But in case you don't, let's get it from the experts. You can go to Urner Berry, which has the infamous Urner Berry Egg Index, EBP, that I know you're checking every single day. And oh my God, look at these egg prices. Up and up and up and up. But if that particular piece of information and the data that goes along with it does not make your jaw drop, well then how about the USDA Egg Markets Overview that, again, I know you're checking on a regular basis, talking about how negotiated wholesale prices for graded loose eggs continue firm to higher with a higher undertone, which doesn't mean very much in and of itself to most normal human beings. But I would say that this graph here on the right probably does. At the very least, you can just eyeball it. It looks like egg prices. This is FOB doc cents per dozen. Well, looks like it's up something like, what, 600, 700 points from just a year or two ago? That's absolutely insane. But hey, let's put this in even more blatant terms. Egg prices continue to crack record highs. Crack record highs. Oh, you kidsters at ABC. Which notes that wholesale egg prices rose by 40 cents in the past 30 days, which means that the cost to distributors was $7.44 a dozen. $7.44 a dozen. But then, confusingly, the national average price for eggs is $4.95 a dozen for shoppers? So it costs less for shoppers than distributors? And it's 53% higher than last year and 81 cents higher than it was in December 2024. This is all very confusing, and since ABC News is one of those dinosaur media establishments that doesn't actually link to the USDA report that they are apparently not citing here, I have no idea how to make sense of those numbers, but they sound pretty bad. And well, don't worry, the Oklahoman has some news for you. Why are egg prices so high? USDA predicts costs will keep rising due to bird flu outbreaks, of course. Egg prices are predicted to increase about 20% in 2025, according to the USDA price outlook, which they actually do link here. And for farm-level eggs, or eggs from pasture-raised or free-range chickens, the increase is even steeper at 45%. But let's put this in the most basic terms possible. Fortune.com, egg price inflation is so bad that some NYC, New York City stores are selling them Lucy cigarette style. So watch out, guys. Don't be selling Lucy's on the street, or you might just get choked to death by the NYPD. But anyway, this is how it rolls in 2025. Now, of course, I am going to bet that most of the media producers out there would take a look at this trend that's going on and focus on, well, this is all part of the grand New World Order project to shepherd us into the new transhuman world future where we're not going to be eating actual food stuff. It'll be lab-made gunk, and they're going to engineer that through this fake, phony, scamdemic bird flu style that they're now using as an excuse to cull flocks, etc., etc. And that is all well and true and good, and yes, absolutely important parts of this story. But the solution is not going to come from that level of analysis. Because the way I see it, we got a couple of options here. One, you could participate in the once every 4 year slave suggestion ritual of trying to vote someone into a position of power, despite the fact that everyone on all sides of the political aisle all admit that yes, every single one of these selections is rigged, fake, so that we can get our preferred candidate into a position of political power at the national level so that he can start infrastructure and other economic projects that will expand the economic by the government illegally from the citizens and then redistributing it in a better way, money out not spending it on $500 billion and create the conditions for which it will be more difficult for the Fed to, by not spending it on $500 billion political machination here by which this can be affected, things like that. Or raise chickens. This is what gets left out of the equation when everything is some grand political project that requires civilization-wide efforts to manage this global economy, because how else can we possibly imagine the world working other than having this vast, complicated machinery of infrastructure and bureaucracy and politicians and all of this to coordinate this mass international infrastructural effort to try to get eggs onto your plate, because there's no other way to do it. Oh wait, eggs are produced for free every single day. Wow, look at that. It's almost like the earth is abundant, and we are being trained not to remember that simple, basic fact. So let's try to remember that fact. Let's try to remember what the real solutions are based on. Our connection to the real world and the people around us. That is reality. Not all these vast, highfalutin ideas of complex, civilization-wide organizational efforts in order to reap the natural abundance of the earth. Now, I speak from some degree of understanding here because this very topic recently came up in a podcast. I was recently on the Fearless podcast, talking to the host of that podcast about hope versus hopium. What is the real hope? And we got onto the conversational subject of real hope being found in community with others and finding what we can do to support each other in the real world. And it was in that exact context that the host made an offhand, passing comment about the price of eggs.
The solutions are incredibly obvious, ancient, right? and it will completely resolve all of this social media fracturing and this hyperbole and this like broken non-contextual talk, right? If we're interacting in real time with local people, and a perfect example right now is due to this new bird flu, eggs are almost non-existent, right? When you go to the store, when you go to Walmart or the local grocery store, eggs are almost non-existent. And if you've been thinking about this for a while or planning for this for a while, we have a very large flock in our backyard, right? And so now people have been saying, hey, I can't get eggs. I'm like, oh, well, I can sell you some eggs. Unfortunately, it's like $6 or $7 a dozen right now, but that's the going rate.
Once again, that was my appearance on the Fearless podcast. The link will be in the show notes if you'd like to listen to that full conversation in its full context. I think it was a good conversation, worth listening to, but I have to put in the caveat that weird, twitchy AI editing is part of the podcast. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't edit it like that. So if you can imbibe information in that form, and I'm sure it is TikTokable. At any rate, there's the podcast, and the link will be in the show notes. But I think you get the point, which is to say, hey, raising chickens, suddenly I find that I have a way of connecting with people in my community, and hey, making some money on the side as well. The supermarkets are selling these things for insane prices, and here I have an abundance of eggs every single day. Wow, imagine that. So, yes, the solution to the egg price crisis is not complicated. It's embarrassingly simple, and it hinges on the embarrassingly simple fact that eggs do not come from a grocery store. Eggs come from chickens. We know this, right? We all know this, and yet somehow we can often forget where this food, this abundance of the earth is really coming from. It is not coming from the store. It is not coming from a lab or a industrial factory or a factory farm. It is coming from chickens. And chickens can be raised on your own property, depending on your property. Now look, just because I say that the answer is simple does not mean that the answer is easy. That is a different thing altogether. No, the easy solution to the egg crisis is to just keep going to the grocery store. And whatever they're selling at whatever price they're selling it, well, that's just what I got to do. It's the easy way. You just go down to the store, pay some of these phony baloney pieces of paper, or electronic credits, and Bob's your uncle, you got some eggs. Well, no, that's the easy way to do it. But the simple way to do it is to raise chickens. Not easy, but simple. Now, simple in what manner? Well, again, it depends on your limitations. It depends on what you're capable of. Not everyone will be capable of raising chickens. Not everyone has space or time or ability to raise a flock of chickens and to take care of that. That is a responsibility, and not everyone's going to be in a position to do so. But I'm willing to bet that almost everybody is in some sort of situation where they could source people in their local community who do that. And for those who are willing or interested, now that there is a financial incentive for them to do so, to start putting their toe in that water. Is this for me? Well, if you're going to get serious about it, you better get serious about it and really start researching and really start knowing what you are talking about. And I have just the handy-dandy resource for you. People in my audience who have been around for the few years now that I've been doing Solutions Watch will remember a conversation I had 3 years ago, or is it 4? I don't know, a long time ago, with Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast on choosing chickens. Exactly like what it says on the tin, it is all about how to choose the right breed of chicken if you are planning on starting a coop. What do I do? What kind of chicken should I have? And that is a seemingly, again, simple question, but it actually involves a lot of thinking and planning and strategizing. The more you go into this with a strategy, the more successful you are likely to be. And although I know it is not a sexy title, no one wants to sit there and watch a 38-minute conversation on choosing chickens. Oh, how boring. I am telling you, it is a jam-packed, information-dense podcast that is well worth your time and attention. So, we're going to flash back to just a clip from that very important conversation that I really, truly exhort you to watch in its entirety. But let's just watch a representative 10-minute clip from that interview where Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast teaches us about the things that you need to start thinking about if you are starting to think about raising your own chickens. Let's start. I just want to hear you say the words, "it depends." So let's say someone comes to you with the question, "I'm thinking about getting some backyard chickens. What kind of chicken should I get, Jack?"
Well, that's one of those questions where there probably isn't a wrong answer, but some answers are more right than others. So it depends. And we could start looking at some of the things it would depend on. Like, so where are you? So if you're in a really cold climate, there's certain birds that would have a predisposition to do better in a cold climate. That would be things like a Brahma, Jersey Giant, Cochins, which are the ones that have the feathered feet that help keep their feet warm. If you're in a kind of temperate climate that doesn't get that cold, doesn't get that hot, whatever you want as far as the temperature thing. If you're in a really hot climate, like a desert climate, then you're going to want to look at something like white leghorns or Egyptian Fayomis, which are a great bird, but one of the ugliest damn chickens on the planet. At least the females are. And they're kind of annoying. But man, when you have, you're in a desert climate or a really hot climate and you have a lot of predators, they're fast, they can fly, so they work better for that. And you just kind of drill down into those individual characteristics that are intrinsic to the breed. There's nothing wrong with going out and getting a half dozen birds, a dozen birds of just random different breeds. But if you want to start trying to figure out how to make this animal work in your system, you're going to want to look a little bit more at things like climate. Another thing you would look at is, well, how do you want to manage these birds? Do you want to manage them in kind of a coop and run where we have a coop they go to at night and a confined area, and we're going to primarily use them as scratchers for making compost? Probably want a heavier breed because when they scratch, they do a lot better job of chopping things up and incorporating things. If we want to free range them, we're looking for birds that have some agility because we're going to have predator issues. No matter what we do, we're going to have some predator issues. So agility is going to be more important. If we want to do chickens specifically for eggs, then we probably want to look at one of the hybrid things like a sex link. And they call them sex links because when they're little baby chickens, instead of checking under the hood, which is really hard with a little tiny bird, you can actually look at their color pattern and you can say this is a male, this is a cockerel, this is a female, or what we call a pullet. And so they're really easy to sort at birth. That's why hatcheries like to sell them to people that want to know, I'm buying mostly hens. But they produce just crazy amounts of eggs in their first 3 years. So they're really good for the dedicated egg producer. They're terrible meat birds. They don't have much, when we look at breeds of animals, generally if something excels at one thing, it doesn't excel at the other. And if it's dual purpose, it excels at neither. Right. So it's all a compromise situation. So we could go with like red sex lynx. They call them black stars over in Australia. They're the same bird. Or we could go with more of a dual purpose bird. So if we want meat, dedicated meat bird, like we're just going to grow this thing. And when it reaches graduation day and it gets processed, we probably want to look at the boring old Cornish cross that the commercial hatcheries raise that are probably the same breed that you're buying when you go to the store. Now, just because that's kind of garbage food doesn't mean yours has to be. You put them on pasture, you feed them high quality feed, and you end up with a much higher quality product. So it depends, right? What do you want? But that's the process that we come at this with. And I think the important thing to understand is we're breaking off like a single thing. How do we pick a chicken? But what we're doing that through what we call the permaculture lens. So we looked at things a little bit differently. Then we're looking at this as a design science. Like we figure out what the end goal is, and then we design the system. And something as mundane as, hey, what breed of chicken? We can actually tailor that to the system. There's people that their literal purpose for their chickens is to make compost. So we can find a chicken that loves to scratch. People that want dual purpose, well, you really want dual purpose? Here's what you do. Pick 2 heavy breeds. I don't care what they are. But make sure your roosters are one breed and that your hens are another breed, and you get hybrid vigor and your F1 first generation, and you get bigger, meatier chickens. Like you're not going to get the big, huge double breasts of the Cornish cross, but you're going to get that hybrid vigor. And hybrid's not a bad word. It doesn't mean GMO. It just means like shepherd and collie dog breeding together. We get a shepherd collie puppy. That's not an unnatural occurrence. So that's kind of how I come at that.
Again, just even in that response, there's so much to pick out there. And it seems to me, coming at this as a relative newcomer to the idea of permaculture and design, but it seems pretty obvious, but it needs to be stated, you have to have as clear a conception as possible when you start any project, like chickens or anything else, what you are doing it for. What is your goal for this, and design around that. And I know that sounds pretty basic, but I realize a lot of people starting out might just kind of elide over that point. It doesn't matter so much. Speak to the importance of getting your goals down as specifically as possible and how you could do that, for example, with choosing chickens.
Yeah, let's take that and look at something like what I call the Egyptian buzzard chicken, which is the Egyptian Fayoumi. So these birds are only like a fully grown rooster, if you do process it for meat, which I've done because you only need so many roosters, will weigh like, when you process it, like 2.5 pounds. So it's not really a great meat bird, but again, they taste great. They're kind of like pheasant in size. But what that bird would be perfect for is a person has a lot of land, doesn't want to sell eggs because they're a smaller egg, right? But they just want a bird that they can pretty much let free range and get most of its food from the land, and they have enough land to do that. That bird would be awesome for that. I've seen them, like hawks come in. I've seen the roosters come out and basically challenge the hawk, like, I'm going to beat your ass if you try to come take my hens. And like that hawk could take that bird out, but that bird's so aggressive. The hawk's like, yeah, I think I'll go eat a rat, right? It has to be a really hungry hawk to come in on a bird that's being that aggressive back to him. So that's about, I don't care about anything except feeding my family as cheaply as possible. And by knowing that, you're able to pick the right bird. If we wanted really big meat birds, but we're okay with them being a stewing bird, right? Like a coal, like something's going to have to be cooked slow and long. We don't necessarily need to be making stir fry. Man, Jersey Giants, because they get almost as big as a freaking small turkey, right? So again, it's all about sit down and say, what do I want from this? What I find most people want are eggs. That's kind of the chicken is like the gateway drug into livestock, right? Because everybody's familiar with them. There's anything you need to know, you can find out online in about 5 seconds. Of course, you're going to get a lot of opinions. And if you ask the wrong question in the wrong place, you'll be told you're stupid. Or you say you want, there's that whole trolling thing in like it's everywhere. But if you just want concrete information, there's plenty of information there. Is it the right bird for everybody? I don't know. It depends, right? Like I keep some chickens, and I keep little Bantam chickens, because the reason I chose these little Bantam chickens is the Bantam Cochins and Silkies are really broody. That means they like to actually sit on and take care of eggs. I don't really want more chickens. I want more ducks. I'm a duck farmer, right? So ducks, most of our domestic ducks, they're really not, they don't have their heart in brooding babies. So you take duck eggs, you put them under a broody bantam chicken. She doesn't know. She doesn't care. It doesn't matter that the thing that hatches is going to be half as big as her the day it hatches. She'll take care of them. And then I don't have to do any work. So when I want to expand my duck flock, I just wait for one of my little banties to go broody, and I give her the eggs. And whatever it is you want to do, there's a way to figure out either this is the right thing for the job or you don't want this at all. I mean, that's another thing. Not everybody needs chickens. The reason I do ducks, I do a lot of gardening and stuff like that. Ducks are lazy. They don't like domestic ducks, right? They don't want to fly. So just by building my garden beds, yay that high, they don't get up in there and mess things up. If I had full-size chickens, they get in everything. They tear everything up. If you'll eat it, they'll eat it. So you have to look at your landscape. How brittle is it? I'm on a very brittle landscape. I have very shallow soils. It's all rock and limestone. It's very alkaline. So the duck is a softer animal on the land. So that's why I went with ducks. I also like to make money. So we sell duck eggs for $8 a dozen. And we sell every egg that we don't want to use for ourselves. We have a waiting list for customers. We're much smaller now, but at one time we were doing that with restaurants and things like that. And we were moving 80 dozen eggs a week at $8 a dozen. While people around us are selling chicken eggs for like whatever you can get because everybody has them. So that was a concept. That was an Agorist concept. Like, what does the market demand? So we marketed a premium product into a premium marketplace, and that way everything paid for itself. We didn't make a ton of money, made a little bit of profit, but we ate the best quality food in the world for free. And the birds ate for free because they paid for themselves. That's how you have to come at each and every decision you're making when you're homesteading, if you're doing it, again, through that permaculture lens. We're going to look at the land. First thing we look at when we look at land, moving off the chickens, water, access, structure. So most people go to buy a piece of property. What they're thinking is, what school district is it in? I'm like, is there water on the property? Can I put water on the property? How would the water flow across the property? Where can I impound water on the property? How can I make sure that I have enough water for myself, my family, and my animals? Access. How am I going to be able to access the property? Where can I put a road in? If we put a road in on a hill, it erodes. If I put a road in on contour, it's stable. Structure. Where are the structures? And where can I place the structures? It's so much beyond, like, people think permaculture is like organic gardening. That's what we would call a shirt in the permaculture wardrobe, right? We have basically a design science based on ethics and based on a prime directive, which is the only ethical decision is take responsibility for yourself and for your children. And if it fits that, it goes in the wardrobe, and then we pull it out as a design element where we need it.
Let me stress once again that podcast on choosing chickens is well worth your time and attention. If you have any interest, not just in the concept of raising chickens specifically, but in permaculture generally, and what types of things you have to think about when it comes to your land and climate and all of the other things that then you learn to work with to shape a plan of some sort for what you're going to do with that land. It's an incredibly fascinating topic, and there's a lot to think about. And so I will just put that out there. I think that edition of Solutions Watch from a few years ago is definitely worth a visit or revisit. Now, having said that, once again, there are a lot of resources that one could and should turn to if one is thinking seriously about starting to choose and raise chickens. And if there is any interest from the audience, let's explore it further in the future. Who would make a good guest to talk about these issues? Who would be able to demonstrate that? Of course, I am interested to hear. Please, Corbett Report members, please leave your suggestions in the comments section at corbettreport.com. Having said that, I would also sincerely like to hear the comments and feedback from people who have done this themselves, people who have raised chickens, not only the good points, but also the bad points. It was such trouble, I had problems with this or that. That is useful feedback as well to give people a more realistic sense of what is involved in the creation of food. It's simple. It comes from chickens, but it ain't easy. And I think it's important for people to understand what they are getting into before they get into something like this. But Perhaps the larger point of this episode is not simply about egg prices and chickens, although that is a good point as well, but it's the larger point that people, when they think of solutions, have been trained, almost like it's a psychological operation that's been performed on them to absolutely beat out any thought of, no. You don't take matters into your own hands. You don't think about things that you can do yourself. You don't think about the abundance of the earth and how to make that manifest for you. No. You have to start thinking about how to situate yourself in some grand political context in order to have the right social engineer in a position of bureaucratic power to control this vast nationwide or international system in order to deliver eggs to your plate for cheaper. No, it is much simpler than that. And we have to stop thinking of every problem as some grand political problem that requires a grand political solution that is 100% out of your control. No, what happens on your plate, on your dinner plate, is in your control. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't sell your own power short. I think it's a pretty important message. And one that people probably need to hear, as unfortunately more and more of people's mind space is preoccupied with the vast, grand political thoughts. It's much simpler than that. On that note, that's going to do it for this edition of Solutions Watch. Thank you for investing your time in this edition of Solutions Watch, and I am looking forward to hearing more from people who have done this in the future so that we can grow our way forward together. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.